Yat and a welcome to the Native Voices in STEM. My name is Dr. Carletta Chief, and I'm an associate professor and extension specialist in environmental science. I am also the PI of the NSF Indigenous Training Program. So I want to welcome each and every one of you here to our seminar series, which is co-sponsored by the University of Arizona Sloan Indigenous Graduate Partnership and the NSF NRT Indigenous program and the School of Natural Resources and the Environment. Today I speak to you from the University of Arizona, which sits on the homelands of the Tohono O'odham and Paskuyaki people, whose care and keeping of these lands allow us to be here today. I also want to make an announcement to everyone that Indigenous is accepting applications to the Indigenous traineeship, which is due February 29th. And we are accepting applications from master's and graduate students. So today I'm really excited to have Dr. Selso Villegas with us here today. I've known Dr. Villegas for about 10 years now. He has always been so gracious with his time and his expertise and his wisdom with our University of Arizona students. For example, he was one of our guest speakers for the Native American Water Resources Corps that we had for many years. And he has been very active in the climate change initiatives and workshops that we do from the University of Arizona. I've learned so much from Dr. Villegas over the many years, and I'm just so excited to have him here with us today on a virtual platform, which is quite different from all the other times that he's been with us. And Dr. Selso Villegas is from the Tohono O'odham Nation. So it's wonderful that we have him here, especially since these lands are belonging to his people. Dr. Villegas serves as director of the water resources for the Tohono O'odham Nation. And his leadership and passion have been instrumental in developing a climate adaptation plan for his tribe. And this adaptation plan was approved by the Legislative Council in 2018. Dr. Villegas grew up on the Tohono O'odham Nation and his grandparents, with his grandparents, and he actually is an alum of University of Arizona. Go Wildcats. So here he received a bachelor's and a master's degree in wildlife and fishery sciences with an emphasis on environmental toxicology. And so he's been able to apply his expertise in this area to tribal nations. And I've had wonderful opportunities to just have a chat with him about his work and his thoughts about environmental toxicology. And it's just, he has a really a unique perspective coming from an Indigenous scientist. So after he worked with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services as an ecologist, he returned back to his nation to become an ecologist and GIS manager, and later becoming the director of the Natural Resources Department before assuming his current leadership. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and give the floor over to Dr. Selso Villegas. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. So, and everybody sees my screen? Okay, good. I get the thumbs up. That's a positive thing. So, first I want to say, as a member of the Tohono O'odham Nation, it's always a good idea to welcome you to our home. You know, we love it out here. It gets pretty hot, but we're desert people and we love it. But lately it's been cold. And it's not too good. We don't like cold. But anyway, so today I want to talk about Mother Earth, climate change, and several projects that I'm working on. So let me start. First, I would like to acknowledge our Juwatkachum, Mother Earth. Our mother is a living being. Because she lives, we live. Every morning through photosynthesis, she converts energy from the sun to make oxygen for us. She spins the water cycle to give us rain and snow. Her soils produce plants we eat and the animals that we eat. Plants for what we eat and plants for what the animals eat. And then we eat the animals. She produces all the raw materials we need to build shelters to protect us from extreme weather events. Every morning I ask the Creator, Natokam, to protect her, especially from us. We make holes in her skin by mining, we pollute her water, and we pollute her air. And she still takes care of us. Her position from the Tash, the sun, is by design. She's not too close to burn us and not too far to freeze us. She has been a mother to many other life forms. Now it's our turn to be her children. We have a lot to be thankful for, and contrary to what we may believe, we are not capable of living without her help. As I mentioned before, although Mother Earth is good to us, we may not be good for her. By burning coal, diesel, gas, we're polluting her atmosphere with carbon dioxide gas, CO2 gas. Increasing CO2 gas in our atmosphere is increasing our average global temperature. We are giving our mother a fever. Climate scientists believe that if we want to control global warming, we need to keep CO2 gas levels in our atmosphere under 350 parts per million. But as you can see in this graph, we're not doing a good job. So when I talk to my people or high school students, one of the questions I get a lot is, and they don't understand climate change. And so they always ask, how does CO2 gas cause global warming? Here's my very simple explanation to them. Heat energy from the sun enters the atmosphere and heats up the Earth's surface. This energy is converted into infrared energy, with most of it reflected back into outer space. The remaining infrared energy is absorbed by the double bonds on the CO2 gas molecules in our atmosphere. The CO2 gas molecules then release the absorbed energy back into the atmosphere in the form of infrared radiation or heat, increasing the average global temperature, global warming. My dissertation involved using X-ray diffraction to identify substrates and sediments. I learned about energy absorption by single, double, and triple chemical bonds. And now it's funny because now I can really see how the CO2 gas molecules absorb infrared energy to a higher energy state, then releases energy to return back to steady state. So it was really interesting. I was wondering a long time ago, am I ever going to use X-ray diffraction? But all of a sudden, when I heard about, what the ability of CO2 gas to absorb infrared energy, I go, I got it. It makes sense. Our mother is warming faster than we predicted. This heat is melting our cryosphere, our snow cover, glacial mass, ice sheet mass, Arctic sea ice, and permafrost. 70% of the world's fresh water is stored in the snow and ice, which is now melting into the ocean. Ocean levels are rising. Phytoplankton and algae in our oceans absorb atmospheric carbon dioxide gas and produce about 70% of the world's oxygen. The warming oceans may slow the growth of these oxygen producers. So we are in a fix. How do we fix it? Last year, 22 extreme weather events have been linked to global warming. These events carried a price tag of about $95 billion. 262 lives were lost. NOAA and NASA announced that 2020 was either the Earth's hottest year on record, or at least the second hottest year, 2016 being the hottest. The continual warming of our oceans may have caused sequential hurricanes, because there was a whole bunch of hurricanes last year. But one of the things that I thought that was interesting is they were just coming out of nowhere. I mean, quickly. And I think that's a different weather pattern than we're accustomed to. Arizona is in a 21-year drought. Drought means little or no rain for an extended period of time. Since last year, all of Arizona, since last week, all of Arizona is in some form of drought. This makes sense since Arizona is in an arid region, but global warming has added more heat. So currently our climate is hotter and drier as usual. If we're not going to stop burning fossil fuels and continue to pollute our atmosphere, our world is going to get hotter. We will need to adapt to a changing climate that may produce more extreme weather events. We will need climate change adaptation plans. In 2018, our tribal council approved our plan. We as a people decided that increasing temperatures, hotter and drier droughts, and extreme weather will be our main climate impacts, affecting our water resources, our safety, and our health. In order to protect our water resources, we've completed 2 comprehensive hydrologic investigations. We have identified our aquifers, and we have estimated how much groundwater is stored in these aquifers. I'm going to assume that everybody knows what an aquifer is. I can say 2 things. Google it. You can Google it, but what I tell young people, because they're the ones that I'm trying to talk to a lot, younger people, is that there is water underneath us, and it's not, it's there and you can use it. And the first thing they say is that, can we swim in it? I said, it's not like that. So yeah, so I'm assuming that at the university level, aquifers are something that you can learn about. But kids like it. They like the name aquifer. Sounds different. Sounds neat. That's what they say. So we also know the quality of the water in our aquifers. We have determined that we have plenty of clean water to drink. Here is a map of our monitoring stations. We use radio telemetry to send real-time data to our main office. We have been monitoring rainfall, surface runoff, and temperature for many years. We track monthly and yearly rain patterns on the nation. During extreme rain events, information from these stations is sent to the National Weather Service Tucson to help forecast which villages may experience potential flooding. Another question that people ask me, especially high school students, do I use science in my job? Yes, I do. I use science, technology, engineering, and math every day when I'm not playing chess against the computer. But don't tell my boss that. That's just between us. I am responsible for providing my people with abundant clean water to drink and to use. I have completed task 1. Our hydraulic investigations show that we have enough groundwater to survive in a hotter and drier environment in the face of climate change for at least 400 years. My second task is to reduce flood risk to villages in the floodplains. Our tribal council has provided my department with funding to complete 3 flood reduction projects. We live in the Sonoran Desert and our average rainfall is about 11 inches a year. Rainfall is scarce, but when it rains and we go into flood alert. I have noticed that our weather events have become more intense, dropping a lot of water over an area in a short period of time. When tropical storm came and hit us, Tropical Storm Rosa, we were monitoring that event. And from 12 o'clock midnight to 6 o'clock in the morning, we received over 6 inches of rain in one area. It was a big event. And we've noticed that it is getting intense and the water is dropping over areas like I've never seen before. And I've been 68, I'm 68 and I've seen a lot of rain events on our nation and I'm starting to see there is a change. Our winds are becoming more powerful. We are facing more microbursts and more flooding in and around our villages. At Kohat, an earthen dam broke and sent about 4 feet of water into the village. At the Alichuk Dam, the flood water came within 2 feet of going over the dam and had the potential to cause major damage to the village just below it. We had to increase the height of the dam using sandbags, put about 5 more feet up to make sure the water didn't topple the dam. Both villages I can't even say the word. I'll just say that the people were taken out of the villages ahead of time, so there will be no deaths. Can't even state that I wrote the excavated or anyway, it doesn't matter. But they were removed before the impact. See what happens when you go to college, sometimes you just don't know what you're talking about. Can't say the words. Here is a 500-year floodplain map for the village of Kohat. This map shows us where the surface water will move during and after an extreme rain event. Using this type of information, we can engineer FEMA certified levels to remove flood water away from the community. We are working with the Bureau of Indian Affairs Dam Safety Program to construct a new dam and spillway at Alichuk to reduce the amount of water behind the dam during extreme rain events. One project that I'd like to complete before I retire is to start a drilling program to find abundant contaminant-free groundwater throughout the nation. Treating water for consumption is costly and some of the constituents are hard to remove. Then we can develop domestic water supplies. Then we can develop domestic water supply wells for the future. This way we can always have access to clean water. The green circles are the areas that we will focus on now, then add more areas in the future until we cover our entire nation. So that's my hope, and that's what I'm working on, is that in the future, my people will never have to look for water, especially contaminated water, that we'll find abundant water that is clean we don't have to treat it, we just have to drink it. So that's what I'm trying to leave for my people, because I think we're being blessed with a lot of groundwater. We don't have any surface water, but for some reason, Natokam decided that we'll have water underneath us. And with that gift, I decided we needed to develop it for our future, for our children and our great-grandchildren and so forth. So with that, how about a conversation? I know it's kind of short, but I didn't know what to do, how to present it. But I'm ready for questions. Got to have one question, right, Nick? I see you. Hi, Nick. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I don't have a question. I'll step back and let others speak.
I sometimes I get the feeling when I do presentations that I never get questions. But I think about it, and well, maybe that's good. Maybe my presentation was good enough that nobody, hey, there's no questions. That's just, I hope that's not true.
Celso, I have a question. This is Julia Fonseca.
Sure.
I saw your map of the rain gauges, and I was thinking about whether you might know of the Pima Regional Flood Control District's alert gauge system, which is a system of rain gauges and stream flow gauges that report as the rain falls and the streams flow to a centralized database, and whether, first of all, whether you know about that, and then secondly, whether you have something like that set up for the Tohono O'odham Nation that could deliver, to people who have internet connection anyway, the information that they might need to get out of harm's way or discover that their roads are blocked by flooding.
Yes, I'm familiar with the Pima County and the Pinal alert system. Pinal County uses one of our stations on Sunland Gin Road.
Oh, good.
So what happened is that when the National Weather Service, we started working with them, we decided that all of this information, they have an FTP site where they pull all this information off it's available for them all the time, 24/7. And so what they do is they get this information and then they send it back to us in an alert or in a format that tells where potential flooding areas will be. And then that information goes out on a public service announcement to the employees. And then it also trickles down to the districts from the Office of Emergency Management. So internally, we have our own warning systems. And we try to place many of the stream gauge at the larger washes so that people driving on 86, and especially the police officers, they will move to those areas where the water is going, and then they will put barricades to make sure that people don't try to go through. So it's been working. It's going to get better. I think I'm thinking about upgrading our telemetry system and also better reporting. And we've been adding staff gauges along any road where the wash crosses, so that we make sure that at least people know the depth of water. So we still every year we do an annual assessment of our alert system, the internal alert system that we have, and we seem to be getting better. So I hope that answers your question.
Wonderful, thank you.
Dr. Villegas, there are several questions popping up in the chat, and I'll read the one that came in first. It's from Carrie Dwen. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Are you also incorporating traditional methods like action farming and forms of rainwater harvesting?
Well, that's a good question, because when it rains lately, okay, let me put it this way. During the summertime, that's when we usually do our action farming, and we use flood water to do that. But we're not doing it at a large scale. There are a lot of families and a lot of organizations and a lot of villages out there that have decided to go back to action farming, and so we do that at a small scale. There's also been talk about us trying to develop some type of bigger reservoirs to collect the water and to do a lot of, to do that so that we can develop our fields next to these reservoirs. But the thing that keeps resurfacing up is that, you know, that we don't receive a lot of rainfall. So when we build anything to collect water, especially a big reservoir or some type of spreader, some type of thing to collect water, you know, about 9 months out of the year, there's no water. So we talked about that. But I do know that there are groups on the nation that have decided that they want to go back to option farming. And I encourage it as the water resource director. But what we need to do, I think, is to do like most tribes, we have to look at how we're going to feed ourselves in the future, you know, especially in the face of climate change. And one of the things I tell them is that, you know, when the water comes and you know how to make diversions to pull it off the washes. So we have an advantage. We've done that historically for years. All we have to do is teach ourselves to go back to that technique for our farming technique. And I think we're responding. I think a lot of Tohono O'odham Community College, they're looking at setting up small projects. And I think we're going back. Hopefully we will, because I think it's about time. We tried to do the conventional large, well, we don't have large farms, but, you know, we have 3 farms. And, you know, we have the ability to feed ourselves within those farming areas. But I think people like the idea, all of them like the idea of that we were historic farmers a long time ago, and maybe we should go back to that tradition. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I see that Dr. Melanie Culver took herself off mute, and I'm wondering if that means she has a question.
Well, I put mine in the chat box, but if you'd like, I could ask it myself.
Yeah, that would be lovely. And then I'll go back to the top of the chat.
Okay. So, you know, we, a group of students who are taking the seminar as a class, we read your paper in Sonorensis, and you described how you're talking to youth about climate change and getting their ideas. So I'm curious if any of their ideas have contributed to the Tohono O'odham Nation planning, climate change planning, and if so, what were the ideas from the youth that you've been able to incorporate into your climate change planning?
Okay. When I talked to council and council asked me to start working on a climate change adaptation plan, they made a lot of suggestions. And one suggestion that I suggested back to them was that we have to include the youth because they are going to be there when climate changes. They're going to be right there and they'll have to decide what is good for them. So what we did is that we had a nationwide youth summit on climate change at one of our high schools, and we invited all the high schools. Well, there's 2 high schools on the nation, and the middle schools, all of those got invited, and then Ashan Prep got invited, and everybody that we knew that had O'odham students, we invited them to come to this summit, and there was a lot of them. I would say there was over 500 kids, and we had one day where they would one session where they would go and they would work on their plan, how they would deal with climate change, knowing what could happen, the possibilities of potential impacts. And so they were gone for a while. Then they came back in the afternoon, and then they presented. Each group had a chance to present what they believed, what their concerns were, and what we could do as a nation. Those their questions and their answers and their dialogue is in our climate change adaptation plan. We included a section in there for them because I told them, you know, when you get older and you start dealing with climate change, look back into the climate change adaptation plan and make some changes because you'll be living through it. So some very things, the common themes were water resources. Will we have water to drink? And I put that to rest. I think they were happy with the answers that I provided. The other thing is that how are we going to feed ourselves? Can we feed ourselves? And we talked about that. It says, yes, we can. And I said, there's no reason why the 3 farms that we have, why can't they grow traditional crops, the sister crops that we need, our survival crops, the tippery beans, the squash, melons, corn that we used to grow. They can grow it for us. That has to be worked out with the Tohono O'odham Farming Authority because they're in there for profit. And I understand that, but I told them, in case we have to, you guys, your land and your water that you have are going to have to feed us. So that was the thing. That's what the young people were saying. They said, yeah, how can we make him do that? And I said, well, you guys get into the Legislative Council. You guys can make them do what they need to do to help us. And the third thing I think that was very interesting was, why are we not using solar power, solar energy? And I told them we should and we could and we need to. But right now, one of our biggest problems is it's a lot cheaper for us to buy electricity off the grid, our grid that we have from the utility authority, than to do large scale solar projects. But one of the kids mentioned that maybe we should use our land, since it's really big, to have a solar farm and sell electricity to other people off the nation. And I say, yeah, it's a good idea. I said, that's the best idea I've heard. So yes, so they were very, that section, if the council ever decides to allow the public to look at our climate adaptation plan, the youth section will probably not be included because these are very, are the youth, our youth, there are things that we think we need to keep to ourselves. So that section is going to be not included. And I believe they should, because it's their words and it's their world in the future. And I think, to save them from, just to protect them. And if they want to put it out as they get older, then they can put it back into the plan. Then everybody can see what they were thinking at the time. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Dr. Villegas, we had a request from the participants that you stop your screen share so that everybody could see the gallery of all the attendees.
Okay, okay, sure.
Thank you so much. And then, of course, we invite everyone who's comfortable to turn on your camera so that we can feel like a community discoursing together.
Okay, Renee. No talking.
Okay, I'm trying on my screen share. I'm stopping it. This will stop the screen share and do, yes, okay. Then what do I do?
I think you just stopped the screen share.
I did, and it's coming back to asking me to select the window or application.
Oh, that is, okay, then I don't know what's going on.
Okay, so there you go.
Oh.
You got me out of there. I don't know how that worked, but
I don't know what I did.
there you go.
Thank you. I'm going to turn over moderating to Dr. Carlotta Chief at this point. And whatever you just did worked perfectly.
Okay, our next question comes from Kathy Jacob. And Kathy is actually the director of the CCAS, which is the Climate Adaptations Program. And her question is, Selso, given your family's long history in this region, how has your background in history prepared you to work on climate adaptation?
That's interesting. I'll answer it this way. when I grew up with my grandparents, I always tell people that I talk to that I was exiled to the reservation because I was too much for my mother, and she didn't. She told me to go with my grandmother. So when I was out there, I thought that wasn't unfair, but I ended up liking it because, boy, she was my grandmother, and all of my aunts and my uncles out there. They taught me so much about science. And one thing they did talk about that was relevant was how it rains and when it's going to rain, and the different type of weather. And it was kind of funny because when I would sit there and I would talk with her, she would say, she would look outside and goes, "It's going to rain today." And I go, "It's not going to rain. I don't see no clouds." And she says, "One of these days you're going to find out how to do all that. You'll know." And so growing up with her and my grandfather, weather was very important, because it meant, are they going to go look at the cattle today? Are they going to plant today? Are they going to go harvest some of the plants before it rains? They were very knowledgeable. All of them, like a lot of people, indigenous people, they're very knowledgeable about weather and climate. It's sort of like they're in tune with the weather. They have to, because they got to know when it's going to be hot or cold and what they're going to have to do. And so they were always preparing. Like I would wonder why there was a lot of movement in our village when things were changing, when the weather was changing and climate. And I would run down to the village and play with the kids, and then they would say, "You better go because it's going to get windy." And I would say, "Where is the wind? I mean, what are you talking about?" But growing up there and living with them, I started to realize that I had to pay more attention to the world, to what was happening around me. And then I started to understand the weather cycle and what was going on and how to, because we give, like most indigenous people, they often give different names to the different type of weather events. One of the things that we talk about is, I didn't know this until I always wondered about it. But our village, Komobabi, sits in a saddle up in the mountains, and we can look down into the valley. And when the monsoons come through, you can see they cross the mountains, and you can see this dust that the rain, the rain front is pushing, like you do, like you water your plants. You can see a little dust come out. That's what we call chukus. And not only did they see that, we would sit there, my grandmother would say, "Look at the chukus, it's coming, it's going to start turning." And they said, "Wow, that's a lot of wind, a lot of dust just blowing it." And we would just see it circular, and we would watch it. And then I would say, "So what does it do? How come it's doing that?" And she said, "Well, the rain is coming and it's blowing up a lot of dust. And that dust is cleaning the earth, Mother Earth, so that when the first rain falls on it, it's going to fall on clean earth. And it's pushing all of that stuff out of the way." And I was thinking, boy, I never thought it would make any sense. But as I got older, I said, wow, not only did they understand rain patterns, they understand the stories, our traditional stories, to why these things happen. And one of the other things that I thought about that makes sense now, how they're always trying to predict North American summer monsoon. Casey Thornblue was a friend of mine who did work on it. And one thing I told him, I said, if you ask my grandmother if if the monsoons are gonna come, she'll say yes, they're gonna come. Then when I found out there's all of these factors that have to be looked at, like the Julian-Madden oscillation, all of the different all of the different processes that have to be done in the Pacific Ocean to form monsoons, my grandmother had a different point of view. She would say, when the monsoons are coming, is when they're gonna come on their time, not human time, not our time, but on the world time, the cosmic time. My grandmother was very fortunate. She went to California. It might not be fortunate, but they took her out of when she was a kid and they put her in California because of this boarding school system. But she took advantage of it. She got an 8th grade education at a Catholic school, and she still maintained her tradition, but she was very intelligent. I mean, 8th grade education in her time was like a high school education. And so when I talked to her, she would tell me stuff. I mean, she was very articulate, and she would point out and she would introduce me. She did the crosswalk from science, Western science to traditional science for me. So all of this stuff that I'm talking about, when it came for time for me to start looking at the climate adaptation plan, I went to all of the districts and many of the villages and asked them what is climate and what is weather too? What does it mean? And all these stories about weather and climate came out. And we couldn't put them all in the climate adaptation plan, but I was just enriched by all of what the O'odham know about climate and weather. So to answer your question, I'm pretty lucky as an O'odham scientist to have a lot of people that I know that kind of just fed me so much information that I can see both sides. I can see the way universities are going to tackle climate change, and I can see the way the O'odham are going to tackle climate change. But in the process, what I know is that there is no right or wrong climate climate change adaptation plan, because we don't know what's going to happen. And a lot of people, a lot of O'odham, older O'odham than I myself, they tell me, we already know that it's going to get warmer. We know the stories about, what's going to happen in the future because we've been told in our stories that it's going to happen. And what is the reassuring thing that I appreciate is that they say, but we're still going to be here. And that's comforting. And I still think we're going to be here. So we try to write the plan, incorporating a lot of traditional values, traditional thoughts, traditional stories, and try to fit it into a human aspect for who we are now. And that's what's in our plan. So that's a long story way around it, and that's what we did. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Dr. Villegas. The next question comes from Sarah Rinkovich. Have you noticed changes in saguaro fruit production because of climate change?
Yes, saguaro and cactus. We love to eat cactus cholla buds, and we like to eat the bayatouch, the saguaro fruit. We just love those things. But we noticed that there's a we noticed it, well, I'll just put it this way, the phenology has changed for the plants. And one of the things that we're noticing that with the hotter climate during the springtime is causing a lot of the cactus the transition between the springtime and then the summer, that time period for the cactus when they start to bud and start to flower, we noticed that they're dropping early because usually we have our tradition and we go out as a family to go get the cholla buds, and we go out there and they're already on the ground. And everybody's saying, hey, you know what, that's not right. 2 weeks, they already dropped. And we won't pick them up. We won't eat them when they touch the ground because ants get them and other, things, other bacteria. So we just leave them alone. But also on the saguaro fruit, we're starting to see that same thing too. The birds, the okokoi, the white-winged dove, it's coming up because of the heat during the transitional period. The okokoi, the white-winged doves are coming up, and usually it's competition between us and the okokoi to get to the fruit first. And they're already here and they already picked it, and we're saying, hey, where's all the fruit? And so that's common. People talk about that as very common. But another thing that is interesting, and I don't know, the University of Arizona is probably working on this, is that there is a lot of, because there's drier soils, and saguaros are really, they, like any other desert plant, they're drying up at the base, and that may cause that dryness at the base is, we're starting to see some of that in some of our saguaros, that when that happens, that, the fungus is going to come in next, and that saguaro may die. We don't have a plague or a blight out here yet, but I do know that other areas in Tucson are experiencing it. So right at this point right now, we're lucky, but I do see that. I do see changes in the phenology, the plant phenology. And I do see changes in the saguaro. Some of them are starting to, there's just not, the soil moisture is not there. And I think right now, nobody really knows the impact on these plants who are really adapted for the desert. And if climate change is affecting that, then we really need to do something. Well, I don't know, we really need to do anything, because maybe it's too late, but yeah, it will be sad. We will lose part of our hemp dock, our tradition, if those plants die, because those are the mainstays of who we are. Cholla buds, if you don't know that, they're high in calcium. They're our milk. And we didn't know that, but now we know that, and we just love the saguaro fruit. It has a lot of it's nutritionist. It has a lot of nutrition, and to lose those plants, it's not a good thing for us as people.
Thank you, Dr. Villegas. I wanted to group a few questions together, just looking at our time, make sure we can get through. We have a lot of questions in the chat, so a lot of great comments about how interesting your talk was. And the questions related to international issues, I think is very interesting. Kathy Wilson is an author member from Paso Verde,
Yes.
Villa, Mexico. And her question is, how is the nation's use of aquifers within Mexico being collaborated on with Mexico, their international concerns? And then there was another question by Nicholas Wilson about studies on the border wall and how that's impacted water harvesting, flooding, and etc. So those are two related questions on international concerns.
Okay, so when we did our investigations, hydrology excuse me, sometimes I lose my train of thought, but sometimes when we did our hydrologic investigations, we found out that many of our aquifers are contained within our system, within our basin and our basin and range provinces. So we really don't share anything with Mexico, which is fortunate, because that means that if they do excessive pumping, that they won't be able to pump out water from us. And I'm involved with the International Boundary and Water Commission, and we keep an eye on any abuse of the water along the U.S.-Mexican border. And right now, we don't have no concerns. We are pretty fortunate, like I said, to have aquifers that are contained, and they don't move into other off the nation. So that's my job. We have monitoring wells along the border. We put them in a long time ago. So we have a lot of data, and the impact on those aquifers are very small. Actually, we receive water to the Vomri Wash. We get a lot of water coming into the nation from Mexico. And it makes a circle, it makes a halfway cycle, and then turns back and then goes back into Mexico. And a lot of people have said, we need to harvest that water. And once again, I've discouraged them to say, okay, we build a big reservoir to contain the water. that will be good. We can infiltrate into our, if we infiltrate down into our aquifers, I said, but 9 months of the year, it will just be dry. So I think there's other things we can do, but I also try to make sure that our counterparts in Mexico understand that we will like to work with them to see if there's any maybe contamination, pesticides, herbicides, other things that we can share a knowledge or we can work together. But like I said, right at this point right now, we're not too concerned about losing any water to Mexico. As far as the border wall, right now our 70 miles of border fence has bollards and other type of structures that are for vehicle barriers. I still think that we have said that we don't want the wall, and we have always maintained that sovereignty, that we don't want a wall being built. I know that some of our members, they say we need a wall to keep the drug dealers and human trafficking off the nation. But at the same time, there's another group that are defenders of the O'odham lands that are saying we don't need a wall. So it's very controversial, and that's fine, because we have to be. I mean, it's good to see both sides, and both sides are really speaking about the same thing, and that we just want to be safe from the people coming through, because there's a lot of people coming through our reservation. Because if you talk to the Border Patrol, they'll say that they're coming through because there's no wall there, and I'm saying they're coming through because our Mexico, United States policies are not working. It's not about how many people can come across. It's just that a lot of them are looking for a better life. And to be honest, a lot of the drugs that are coming across from Mexico are for our consumption. The United States likes to do drugs. So the problems that we see are bigger than the wall. So I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Villegas. The next question is about youth, and asking you, what do you think are the best ways to prepare the next generation for dealing with climate change? That comes from Richie Thaxton. And then Caitlin Gall also said that she enjoyed how you mentioned the youth think about groundwater, and that how do you help students understand climate and water topics, and how do you communicate that to them? So it's about preparation, communication, and understanding of climate topics with the youth.
To be honest, we work with the second and fifth graders a lot. We're just trying to introduce science and technology and engineering and math to them. So we've had this after school program where we do small little experiments with them and get them all interested, and they like it, and we like doing it. And that's Justin Manuel, he's the assistant director, and myself. We decided that since we're science people and engineering and science people, we needed to start incorporating that as part of our performance measures for a department, try to get them interested, because in the process of doing that, we can start to develop our kids' interest in science, math, science, technology, engineering, and math. Because as you know, and you understand, and you work with young people, either you like math or you don't. And they look at math as something complicated, but when we do our experiments, we put a lot of math in there. We do really simple math, things that they can answer. But it's kind of hard to talk to those ones. When we talk to the middle school, it gets a little bit easier because they understand by the social media about climate change. They don't understand the full impacts, and they are worried and they are scared because they talk about it in the way you would talk about something as a young person that you don't want to know the answer because you might think it's going to be bad. But when you talk to the high school students, they have more of an open conversation that first they want to know why it happened. And then they want to know, what are we doing about it? The nation, actually us, what is the nation doing? They're not concerned about what the United States or the rest of the world is doing with it. They're more concerned about what the nation's doing with it. So I try to tell them myself, one of the things I do is I make a styrofoam model of the CO2 molecule. I have a big model, I carry it, I walk in with it, and they always look at it and I say, this is a CO2, carbon dioxide molecule, gas molecule. And this is the problem to climate change. And I tell them that if the only thing that you know, and this is not for the little ones, the 2 to 5 fifth graders, but anybody else in need, if you want to know as an autumn and you tell other people that you know what's causing climate change, it's this molecule, I pick it up, it's this thing. It's what we're doing instead. And part of the problem is that your parents drive cars and we drive cars and we're causing this thing to go up into the air. And it gets complicated, but eventually I tell them, so when you talk to people and you say that, Dr. Villegas or Selso talk to you, what are you going to say about climate change? Where is the problem? And they say, the molecule. And I say, okay, you got it. And I think that's part of it is that, like most young people, they're scared. They want to know where they fit in the policy making. And they want to know what's causing it, what's driving it, and they want to know what's our answer. And I tell them, we don't really have an answer, but what we're going to do is we're going to be ready to adapt to anything that Mother Earth is going to do. And because Mother Earth she is here to protect us as well, she will give us indicators that will help us to know if we're doing a good job. So that's a hard question. I feel that I don't want to scare the young people, but as the older people, like the community college or high school seniors or people that are at the university, people I talk to in these science-based university programs that I speak to, I tell them there's a reality to what's happening. But the reality, one of the realities is that Tohono O'odham were here a long time ago, and that we're going to be here a long time in the future. So whatever we do as a people, our main concern is not to panic and not to be scared, but to adapt. And if that means change the way we are, the way we live, then that's what we have to do. Because our goal, besides any climate change or social, anything, our job is to survive as desert people to the 21st century and beyond. So that's how I do it. It's kind of complicated. That's a hard one. I mean, it's not like talking to a graduate student who's doing work in climate change. It's just hard. But anyway.
Well, I think that's a great way to end the seminar, to think about the resilience of Indigenous peoples through millennia and adaptation to climate change. So I want to thank you so much, Dr. Villegas, for your time here today, and also the next hour that you'll spend with our students. I encourage the students to stay. And then for all of the others, a reminder that we invite you to our next speaker, which will be Dr. Daniel Wildcat of Haskell Indian Nations, who will be presenting on March 17th at 3 p.m. So just a reminder that it will be daylight saving times for those of you who are changing time, that will actually be on Pacific Daylight Time. But anyways, just know that there's a change for everybody else for the next seminar series. And Dr. Wildcat is another outstanding speaker with a lot of knowledge and working with Indigenous people. So thank you, Dr. Villegas, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. Have a wonderful week.
You're welcome.
Thank you.